Welcome to Growth Mindset Success, where your journey to personal excellence begins. Here, we unlock powerful ideas and timeless wisdom from the world's most influential books on success, mindset, and motivation. In a fast-paced world, you need guidance that inspires and equips you to act, improve, and rise. That's what we deliver. No fluff, just value. Whether you're an entrepreneur, dreamer, or seeker of clarity and purpose, you're in the right place. So sit back, relax, and get ready to grow. If you find value, don't forget to subscribe for weekly book summaries that unlock your full potential. Let's dive in. Introduction. Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking is one of the most influential self-help books of the 20th century. First published in 1952, it teaches practical methods for developing confidence, peace of mind, and a positive mental attitude. Peale combines personal stories, biblical wisdom, and motivational psychology to show how faith and optimism can overcome fear, defeat, and worry. This first part of the explanation summarizes the early chapters, which lay the foundation for positive thinking, self-belief, prayer, and the power of a peaceful mind. Contents. The Power of Positive Thinking. The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent. The Power of Positive Thinking. Preface. At the time I wrote this book, it never occurred to me that more than 2 million copies would be sold in various hardcover editions, and that it would one day attract a vast new readership through a paperback edition such as this. Frankly, however, my gratitude for this event is not from the viewpoint of books sold, but in terms of the many persons to whom I have been privileged to suggest a simple, workable philosophy of living. The dynamic laws which the book teaches were learned the hard way by trial and error in my personal search for a way of life. But I found in them an answer to my own problems, and believe me, I am the most difficult person with whom I have worked. The book is my effort to share my spiritual experience, for if it helped me, I felt it might also be of help to others. In formulating this simple philosophy of life, I found my own answers in the teachings of Jesus Christ. I have merely tried to describe those truths in the language and thought forms understandable to present-day people. The way of life to which this book is a witness is very wonderful. It is not easy. Indeed, it often is hard, but it is full of joy and hope and victory. I well recall the day I sat down to begin writing the book. I knew that the best work required more ability than I possessed, and therefore I needed help that only God could give. My wife and I have the policy of taking God into working partnership in all our problems and activities. So we had a very earnest session of prayer, asking for guidance, and we put the project into God's hands. When the manuscript was ready for the publisher, Mrs. Peale, and I again prayed, dedicating the manuscript. We asked only that it might help people to live more effective lives. When the first copy of these 2 million books came from the press to us, it was again a spiritual moment. We thanked God for His help and dedicated the book once more. The book was written for the plain people of this world, of whom certainly I am one. I was born and reared in humble Midwestern circumstances in a dedicated Christian home. The everyday people of this land are my own kind, whom I know and love and believe in with great faith. When anyone allows God to have charge of his life, the power and glory are amazingly demonstrated. The book is written with deep concern for the pain, difficulty, and struggle of human existence. It teaches the cultivation of peace of mind, not as an escape from life into protected quietness, but as a power center out of which comes driving energy for constructive personal and social living. It teaches positive thinking, not as a means to fame, riches, or power, but as the practical application of faith to overcome defeat and accomplish worthwhile creative values in life. It teaches a hard, disciplined way of living, but one which offers great joy to the person who achieves victory over himself and the difficult circumstances of the world. To all who have written me about the joyous victory they have had through practicing the spiritual techniques of this book, and to those who will yet have such experiences, may I say how happy I am for all that is happening to them as they live by dynamic spiritual formulas. I wish finally to express deep appreciation to my publishers for their never-failing support, cooperation, and friendship. I have never worked with finer people than my cherished friends at Prentice Hall. I look forward with great pleasure to my association with Fawcett Publications. May God continue to use this book in human helpfulness. This book is written to suggest techniques and to give examples which demonstrate that you do not need to be defeated by anything, that you can have peace of mind, improved health, and a never-ceasing flow of energy. In short, your life can be full of joy and satisfaction. Of this I have no doubt at all, for I have watched countless persons learn and apply a system of simple procedures that has brought about these benefits in their lives. These assertions, which may appear extravagant, are based on genuine demonstrations in actual human experience. Altogether, too many people are defeated by the everyday problems of life. They struggle, perhaps even whine, through their days with a sense of dull resentment at what they consider the bad breaks life has given them. In a sense, there may be such a thing as the breaks in life, but there is also a spirit and method by which we can control and even determine those breaks. It is a pity that people should let themselves be defeated by the problems, cares, and difficulties of human existence, and it is also quite unnecessary. In saying this, I certainly do not ignore or minimize the hardships and tragedies of the world, but neither do I allow them to dominate. You can permit obstacles to control your mind to the point where they become the dominating factors in your thought pattern. By learning how to cast them from the mind, by refusing to become mentally subservient to them, and by channeling spiritual power through your thoughts, you can rise above obstacles which ordinarily might defeat you. By the methods I shall outline, obstacles are simply not permitted to destroy your happiness and well-being. You need be defeated only if you are willing to be. This book teaches you how to will not to be. The purpose of this book is a very direct and simple one. It makes no pretense to literary excellence, nor does it seek to demonstrate any unusual scholarship on my part. It is simply a practical, direct action, personal improvement manual. It is written with the sole objective of helping the reader achieve a happy, satisfying, and worthwhile life. I thoroughly and enthusiastically believe in certain demonstrated and effective principles which, when practiced, produce a victorious life. My aim is to set them forth in this volume in a logical, simple, and understandable manner so that the reader, feeling a sense of need, may learn a practical method by which he can build for himself, with God's help, the kind of life he deeply desires. If you read this book thoughtfully, carefully absorbing its teachings, and if you will sincerely and persistently practice the principles and formulas set forth herein, you can experience an amazing improvement within yourself. By using the techniques outlined here, you can modify or change the circumstances in which you now live, assuming control over them rather than continuing to be directed by them. Your relations with other people will improve. You will become a more popular, esteemed, and well-liked individual. By mastering these principles, you will enjoy a delightful new sense of well-being. You may attain a degree of health not previously known by you and experience a new and keen pleasure in living. You will become a person of greater usefulness and will wield an expanded influence. How can I be so certain that the practice of these principles will produce such results? The answer is simply that for many years in the Marble Collegiate Church of New York City, we have taught a system of creative living based on spiritual techniques, carefully noting its operation in the lives of hundreds of people. It is no speculative series of extravagant assertions that I make, for these principles have worked so efficiently over so long a period of time that they are now firmly established as documented and demonstrable truth. The system outlined is a perfected and amazing method of successful living. In my writings, including several books, in my regular weekly newspaper column in nearly 100 dailies, in my national radio program over 17 years, in our magazine guideposts, and in lectures in scores of cities, I have taught these same scientific yet simple principles of achievement, health, and happiness. Hundreds have read, listened, and practiced, and the results are invariably the same: new life, new power, increased efficiency, and greater happiness. Because so many have requested that these principles be put into book form, the better to be studied and practiced, I am publishing this new volume under the title The Power of Positive Thinking. I need not point out that the powerful principles contained herein are not my invention, but are given to us by the greatest teacher who ever lived and who still lives. This book teaches applied Christianity, a simple yet scientific system of practical techniques of successful living that works. It is appalling to realize the number of pathetic people who are hampered and made miserable by the malady popularly called the inferiority complex. But you need not suffer from this trouble. When proper steps are taken, it can be overcome. You can develop creative faith in yourself, faith that is justified. After speaking to a convention of businessmen in a city auditorium, I was on the stage greeting people when a man approached me and, with a peculiar intensity of manner, asked if he might talk with me about a matter of desperate importance to him. I asked him to remain until the others had gone. Then we went backstage and sat down. He explained, "I am in this town to handle the most important business deal of my life. If I succeed, it means everything to me. If I fail, I am done for." I suggested that he relax a little, that nothing was quite that final. If he succeeded, that was fine. If he didn't, well, tomorrow was another day. He said dejectedly, "I have a terrible disbelief in myself. I have no confidence. I just don't believe I can put it over. I am very discouraged and depressed. In fact, I am just about sunk. Here I am, 40 years old. Why is it that all my life I have been tormented by inferiority feelings, by lack of confidence, by self-doubt? I listened to your speech tonight in which you talked about the power of positive thinking, and I want to ask how I can get some faith in myself." "There are 2 steps to take," I replied. "First, it is important to discover why you have these feelings of no power. That requires analysis and will take time. We must approach the maladies of our emotional life as a physician probes to find something wrong physically. This cannot be done immediately, certainly not in our brief interview tonight, and it may require treatment to reach a permanent solution. But to pull you through this immediate problem, I shall give you a formula which will work if you use it. As you walk down the street tonight, I suggest that you repeat certain words which I shall give you. Say them over several times after you get into bed. When you awaken tomorrow, repeat them 3 times before arising. On the way to your important appointment, say them 3 additional times. Do this with an attitude of faith, and you will receive sufficient strength and ability to deal with this problem. Later, if you wish, we can go into an analysis of your basic problem. But whatever we come up with following that study, the formula which I am now going to give you can be a large factor in the eventual cure. Following is the affirmation which I gave him. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Philippians 4:13. He was unfamiliar with these words, so I wrote them on a card and had him read them over 3 times aloud. Now follow that prescription, and I am sure things will come out all right. He pulled himself up, stood quietly for a moment, then said with considerable feeling, "Okay, doctor, okay." I watched him square his shoulders and walk out into the night. He seemed a pathetic figure, and yet the way he carried himself as he disappeared showed that faith was already at work in his mind. Subsequently, he reported that this simple formula did wonders for him, and added that it seemed incredible that a few words from the Bible could do so much for a person. This man later had a study made of the reasons for his inferiority attitudes. They were cleared away by scientific counseling and by the application of religious faith. He was taught how to have faith and was given certain specific instructions to follow, which are given later in this chapter. Gradually, he attained a strong, steady, reasonable confidence. He never ceases to express amazement at the way in which things now flow toward rather than away from him. His personality has taken on a positive, not negative, character so that he no longer repels success, but on the contrary, draws it to him. He now has an authentic confidence in his own powers. There are various causes of inferiority feelings, and not a few stem from childhood. An executive consulted me about a young man whom he wished to advance in his company. But he explained, the man could not be trusted with important secret information, and he was sorry, for otherwise he would have made him his administrative assistant. He had all the other necessary qualifications, but he talked too much, and without meaning to do so, divulged matters of a private and important nature. Upon analysis, I found that he talked too much simply because of an inferiority feeling. To compensate for it, he succumbed to the temptation of parading his knowledge. He associated with men who were rather well-to-do, all of whom had attended college and belonged to a fraternity. But this young man was reared in poverty, had not been a college man or fraternity member. Thus he felt himself inferior to his associates in education and social background. To build himself up with his associates and to enhance his self-esteem, his subconscious mind, which always seeks to provide a compensatory mechanism, supplied him with a means for raising his ego. He was on the inside in the industry and accompanied his superior to conferences where he met outstanding men and listened to important private conversations. He reported just enough of his inside information to cause his associates to regard him with admiration and envy. This served to elevate his self-esteem and satisfy his desire for recognition. When the employer became aware of the cause of this personality trait, being a kindly and understanding man, he pointed out to the young man the opportunities in business to which his abilities could lead him. He also described how his inferiority feelings caused his unreliability in confidential matters. This self-knowledge, together with a sincere practicing of the techniques of faith and prayer, made him a valuable asset to his company. His real powers were released. I can perhaps illustrate the manner in which many youngsters acquire an inferiority complex through the use of a personal reference. As a small boy, I was painfully thin. I had lots of energy, was on a track team, was healthy and hard as nails, but thin. And that bothered me because I did not want to be thin. I wanted to be fat. I was called skinny, but I did not want to be called skinny. I wanted to be called fat. I longed to be hard-boiled and tough and fat. I did everything to get fat. I drank cod liver oil, consumed vast numbers of milkshakes, ate thousands of chocolate sundaes with whipped cream and nuts, cakes and pies innumerable, but they did not affect me in tick 7 he slightest. I stayed thin and lay awake nights thinking and agonizing about it. I kept on trying to get heavy until I was about 30, when all of a sudden I got heavy. I bulged at the seams. Then I became self-conscious because I was so fat and finally had to take off 40 pounds with equal agony to get myself down to respectable size. In the second place, to conclude this personal analysis, which I give only because it may help others by showing how this malady works, I was a minister's son and was constantly reminded of that fact. Everybody else could do everything. But if I did even the slightest little thing, people would say, "Ah, you are a preacher's son." So I did not want to be a preacher's son, for preachers' sons are supposed to be nice and namby-pamby. I wanted to be known as a hard-boiled fellow. Perhaps that is why preachers' sons get their reputation for being a little difficult, because they rebel against having to carry the banner of the church all the time. I vowed there was one thing I would never do, and that was to become a preacher. Also, I came of a family practically every member of which was a performer in public, a platform speaker, and that was the last thing I wanted to be. They used to make ball does lie.